My beloved child. Something unusual happened last night. While the world was settling into silence, while lights faded behind closed doors and distractions finally loosened their grip on restless minds, a conversation began that carried more weight than anyone in that room realized. It was not planned. It was not rehearsed. And yet, it revealed a truth that had been hidden beneath hesitation for far longer than you know. The person who has occupied your thoughts. The one whose energy seems to drift into your heart at the most unexpected moments, opened a door they had kept locked for a very long time. Not to you. Not yet. But to trusted friends. And what emerged from that conversation has created movement in places you cannot currently see. You have wondered if your connection was real. You have questioned your intuition. You have asked yourself whether the signs were meaningful or simply wishful thinking. Those questions have echoed through your spirit more times than you can count. But there is something important I need you to understand. People reveal their deepest feelings long before they reveal their final decisions. That is why what occurred last night matters more than you realize. The words spoken were not perfect. They were not dramatic. In fact, some of them were wrapped in nervous laughter. Some were hidden behind casual phrases. Some were disguised as uncertainty. Yet hidden beneath every sentence was a truth struggling to be acknowledged. A truth that has been growing quietly. A truth that could no longer remain completely buried. And as their friends listened, something unexpected happened. The conversation became deeper. Questions were asked. Questions your person could not easily avoid. Questions that forced them to look directly at emotions they had spent so much time trying to understand. For a moment, the masks became heavy. The walls became difficult to maintain. And the feelings they normally keep under control began rising closer to the surface. You may not know this, but sometimes the greatest breakthroughs happen when people stop speaking from their minds and accidentally begin speaking from their hearts. That is where your person found themselves. Standing at the edge of a realization. Not fully across it. Not completely transformed. But no longer able to pretend certain feelings do not exist. Can you feel the difference? Because something has shifted. Even if no message has arrived. Even if circumstances appear unchanged. Even if the physical evidence has not yet reached your eyes. The spiritual atmosphere surrounding this connection is moving. And movement always begins long before visible results appear. Many people give up because they only trust what they can see. But I am asking you to pay attention to what is unfolding beneath the surface. There are conversations happening beyond your awareness. There are thoughts being revisited. There are emotions being examined. There are possibilities being considered. And your person is beginning to understand that some connections cannot simply be ignored forever. Still, this is not the most surprising part. Because during that conversation, one particular moment caused the entire energy to change. A friend asked a question. A simple question. Yet it struck directly at the center of everything your person has been trying to avoid. For a brief second, there was silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind of silence that appears when someone suddenly encounters a truth they are not prepared to explain. And the answer that followed revealed far more than anyone expected. Far more than your person intended. The room felt different afterward. The conversation felt different afterward. And most importantly, your person felt different afterward. They left carrying a realization that is continuing to grow even now. A realization that may soon influence choices they have been postponing. But before that realization fully unfolds, before the next step becomes clear, there is one detail about that question. And the emotional response it triggered, that you need to hear. And what it revealed changes everything. The question was not complicated. It was not wrapped in mystery. In fact, anyone listening might have overlooked it entirely. Yet heaven often uses simple moments to uncover extraordinary truths. The friend leaned forward and asked something your person was not expecting. If this connection means so little, then why do you keep talking about them? Everything paused. Not externally. The conversation continued. The room remained the same. But inside your person's heart, time seemed to slow. Because some questions are impossible to answer without confronting what has been hidden. And this was one of them. For a moment, they searched for an easy explanation. Something logical. Something safe. Something that would allow them to avoid exposing what was truly happening inside. But every answer felt incomplete. Every excuse sounded weaker than the one before it. Because deep down, they already knew the truth. You do not repeatedly think about someone who means nothing. You do not revisit memories that have no value. You do not carry someone's energy through your days and nights if your heart feels absolutely nothing. And your person is beginning to recognize this. Not because someone forced them to. Not because circumstances demanded it. But because their own soul is becoming tired of denying what it already understands. There comes a moment in every meaningful connection when avoidance becomes heavier than honesty. Your person is approaching that moment now. Can you feel how significant this is? For so long, they have analyzed every emotion. They have questioned every sign. They have attempted to explain away every feeling that pointed back toward you. Yet last night, something happened that logic could no longer control. The conversation stopped being about facts. It became about truth. And truth has a way of revealing itself no matter how many doors people try to close. As the discussion continued, another friend noticed something. Not what your person was saying. But how they were saying it. The change in their voice. The way their eyes softened. The way certain memories seemed to appear instantly whenever your name or presence entered the conversation. People notice these things more than you realize. Energy speaks even when words are trying to remain guarded. And suddenly, your person found themselves surrounded by individuals who could see through the walls they had carefully constructed. That realization was uncomfortable. But it was also necessary. Because sometimes growth begins when someone realizes they are no longer hiding as successfully as they thought. Listen carefully. Your person is not standing where they were a few weeks ago. Something inside them is evolving. The questions they once ignored now follow them. The feelings they once dismissed now demand attention. The future they once avoided imagining has begun appearing in quiet moments when they least expect it. And every time it appears, you are somehow connected to it. Not as a passing thought. Not as a random memory. But as someone whose presence continues to leave an impression that refuses to fade. There is a reason for this. Certain connections are designed to teach people something about themselves. And whether your person fully understands it yet or not, you have become a mirror. A mirror reflecting emotions they can no longer easily escape. That is why last night mattered. The conversation did not create these feelings. It revealed them. It brought hidden emotions into the light where they could finally be examined. And once something has been seen clearly, it becomes very difficult to pretend it does not exist. Yet an even deeper shift was occurring beneath the surface. Because after the gathering ended, after the voices faded, after everyone returned to their own lives, your person found themselves alone. And solitude has a unique power. It removes distractions. It silences outside opinions. It leaves people face to face with their own hearts. That is when the memories returned. Not one memory. Many. Moments they thought they had forgotten. Conversations they replayed countless times. Small details that somehow remained vivid despite the passing of time. And with every memory came a question growing louder inside them. A question they have been resisting for far too long. A question that arrived with such force that it kept them awake far later than expected. Because for the first time, they were not wondering what you felt. They were wondering what they truly felt. And the answer beginning to emerge frightened them. Not because it was negative, but because it was far more powerful than they were prepared to admit. And what happened during those quiet late-night hours may be the beginning of a transformation neither of you saw coming. There is a strange kind of honesty that only appears in the late hours of the night. When the world becomes quiet. When distractions lose their power. When the heart begins speaking louder than the mind. That is where your person found themselves. Alone with thoughts they could no longer outrun. Alone with feelings that refused to stay buried. And as the minutes passed, something unexpected happened. The certainty they once carried began to dissolve. The explanations they had relied on started falling apart. The carefully organized stories they told themselves no longer felt convincing. Because deep inside, a realization was awakening. A realization that had been waiting patiently for the perfect moment to emerge. You see, many people think transformation happens in one dramatic instant. But most of the time, it begins quietly. A single thought. A single question. A single moment of truth that refuses to disappear. And that moment arrived last night. Your person began replaying everything. Not just recent events. Not just obvious memories. But the entire journey. The small moments. The overlooked moments. The moments that seemed insignificant at the time but now carried unexpected meaning. Suddenly, things started connecting. Pieces that once felt unrelated began forming a picture. And the picture revealed something they had not fully understood before. You have affected them more deeply than they admitted. Far more deeply. The impact of a genuine connection is rarely measured by time. It is measured by presence. By the way someone remains in your thoughts. By the way their energy continues influencing your emotions long after a conversation ends. By the way certain memories remain alive when others have faded away. And your person is beginning to recognize this truth. Not as a possibility. Not as a theory. But as something increasingly difficult to deny. Meanwhile, a quiet battle is taking place inside them. One part wants certainty. One part wants control. One part wants guarantees before taking another step. But another part, a deeper part, is becoming tired of living behind caution. Can you sense the tension? Because this is where everything becomes interesting. The heart is pulling in one direction. Fear is pulling in another. And your person is standing directly between them. This is not weakness. This is growth. Growth often feels uncomfortable because it requires people to leave behind familiar patterns. Your person has spent a long time protecting themselves. Protecting their emotions. Protecting their expectations. Protecting themselves from disappointment. But walls that keep pain out often keep meaningful connections out as well. And somewhere inside, they are starting to realize the cost of those walls. That realization is changing them. Slowly. Quietly. Powerfully. The most fascinating part is that they may not even recognize how much they are changing yet. Transformation often happens before awareness catches up. The soul moves first. Understanding follows later. That is why certain signs have been appearing. That is why certain thoughts keep returning. That is why your presence continues surfacing in unexpected moments. There is movement occurring beneath the surface that cannot be rushed. Yet it cannot be stopped either. And then, something happened that caught even your person off guard. A future thought appeared. A brief image. A possibility. Nothing dramatic. Nothing overwhelming. Just a simple vision of what life could look like if they stopped resisting what their heart was trying to show them. The image appeared for only a moment. But it lingered. And once it appeared, they could not completely forget it. Because for the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future that included possibilities they had previously refused to explore. That moment may seem small. But do not underestimate it. Great changes often begin with a single permission. The permission to wonder. The permission to hope. The permission to imagine. And your person gave themselves that permission last night. Even if only briefly. Even if only in secret. Yet what happened next is what truly matters. Because shortly before sleep finally arrived, a realization surfaced with remarkable clarity. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It arrived as a quiet truth. The kind of truth that settles into the heart and refuses to leave. And when that realization appeared, everything they thought they understood about this connection suddenly looked different. What they recognized in that moment is still unfolding right now. It is still shaping their thoughts. Still influencing their emotions. Still preparing them for a decision they may have to face sooner than expected. And the realization itself is far more significant than they are ready to admit. Not every revelation arrives like thunder. Some arrive like a whisper. So gentle that it would be easy to miss. Yet those quiet revelations often carry the power to change everything. The realization that settled into your person's heart was not about circumstance. It was not about timing. It was not about what others might think. It was about value. For the first time in a long while, they stopped asking themselves whether this connection was convenient. They stopped analyzing whether it fit perfectly into their plans. They stopped focusing on all the reasons they had used to create distance. Instead, they found themselves asking a completely different question. What if this connection is far more important than I've allowed myself to believe? The moment that question appeared, something shifted. Because questions have power. The right question can unlock a door that has remained closed for years. And this question opened a door your person had been avoiding. Behind that door were emotions they had carefully organized and placed out of reach. Emotions they thought they understood. Emotions they thought they controlled. But last night proved otherwise. You see, feelings do not disappear simply because they are ignored. They wait. They grow. They deepen. And eventually, they ask to be acknowledged. That is exactly what is happening now. Your person is beginning to see this connection through a different lens. A clearer lens. A more honest lens. And honesty changes everything. Because once people stop running from truth, they start moving toward it. Even when the path feels uncertain. Even when fear still whispers in the background. Even when they do not yet know what the outcome will be. Something beautiful happens when the heart becomes brave enough to face itself. That bravery is emerging. Slowly. But undeniably. And here is what many people fail to understand. The greatest turning points are rarely visible from the outside. To everyone else, your person may appear exactly the same. Their routine may look the same. Their words may sound the same. Their daily life may seem unchanged. Yet internally, entire landscapes are shifting. Entire beliefs are being questioned. Entire possibilities are being reconsidered. This is why patience is often misunderstood. People assume nothing is happening simply because they cannot see immediate results. But some of the most important changes happen in silence. Beneath the surface. Far from public view. That is where your person is now. Standing in a space between who they were and who they are becoming. And while they may not have all the answers yet, they are asking better questions. Questions that lead toward clarity. Questions that lead toward truth. Questions that lead toward action. Because eventually, Every growing realization reaches a point where it can no longer remain only a thought. It begins seeking expression. It begins seeking movement. It begins seeking a next step. That next step has not fully arrived yet. But it is closer than your person realizes. In fact, there is something they have started noticing over the past several days. A pattern. A feeling. A repeated pull that seems to appear whenever they try to focus on something else. No matter how busy they become. No matter how many distractions fill their schedule. Certain thoughts continue returning. And those thoughts keep leading back to the same place. Back to the same connection. Back to the same unanswered questions. Back to you. This is not happening by accident. Because the heart has a remarkable way of guiding attention toward what truly matters. And despite every attempt to look elsewhere, their attention keeps finding its way back. That realization is becoming impossible to ignore. Yet what happened this morning may be even more important than what happened last night. Because when your person woke up, the feelings they expected to fade were still there. The questions remained. The curiosity remained. The emotional pull remained. And that surprised them. They thought a night's sleep might quiet everything. Instead, it made everything clearer. The emotions felt less confusing. The truth felt harder to avoid. The connection felt more real. And as the day continued, a new thought began forming in the background of their mind. A thought that has the potential to change the direction of everything. At first, it appeared only briefly. Then it returned. Then it stayed longer. And now, it is becoming impossible for them to completely dismiss. Because this thought is not about what has already happened. It is about what could happen next. And the moment they fully accept that possibility, a chain of events may begin that neither of you expected. There comes a moment in every meaningful journey when the future stops feeling like a distant idea and starts feeling possible. That is the space your person is entering now. Not because every fear has disappeared. Not because every question has been answered. But because something inside them is becoming stronger than their hesitation. The thought that keeps returning is simple, yet powerful. What happens if I stop holding back? At first, they tried to brush it aside. They told themselves there was no reason to dwell on it. No reason to explore it. No reason to follow where it might lead. But the thought remained. Quiet. Persistent. Patient. Like a knock at a door that refuses to be ignored. And with every passing hour, it has become a little louder. Because deep within their spirit, they are beginning to understand something important. Regret often comes from opportunities left unexplored. From words left unspoken. From feelings left hidden. From chances never taken. Your person has spent a long time protecting themselves from uncertainty. Yet now they are starting to wonder whether that protection has cost them more than they realized. That question alone is changing everything. Because once someone begins examining their own limitations, growth becomes inevitable. Listen closely. The energy around this connection is no longer focused on the past. For a long time, your person kept looking backward. Analyzing previous moments. Replaying old conversations. Questioning things that had already happened. But now their attention is shifting. Forward. Toward possibility. Toward potential. Toward what might still be waiting ahead. This shift matters more than you know. Because people move in the direction of their focus. And for the first time in a very long time, your person's focus is beginning to move toward hope rather than uncertainty. Toward opportunity rather than fear. Toward discovery rather than avoidance. Can you feel how significant that is? A heart that once guarded itself is beginning to open. Not all at once. Not recklessly, but steadily. Naturally. As though something larger than fear is gently guiding the process. And there is another reason this moment is important. Your person is beginning to realize that certain connections continue appearing for a reason. Not every encounter leaves a lasting imprint. Not every relationship changes someone from the inside out. Yet some people arrive carrying lessons, growth, inspiration, and meaning that cannot easily be forgotten. You have become associated with something powerful in their life. Something that continues calling for their attention. Something that continues asking to be understood. That realization is becoming impossible to escape. And as it grows stronger, another change is occurring. Confidence. Not loud confidence. Not dramatic confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that develops when someone stops fighting their own heart. The kind that develops when truth begins replacing confusion. The kind that develops when someone realizes they may already know the answer they've been searching for. This confidence is still forming. Still fragile. Still new. But it is there. And every day it becomes a little stronger. Meanwhile, events are aligning in ways neither of you can fully see yet. Small moments. Unexpected opportunities. Subtle shifts. Conversations that seem ordinary but carry hidden significance. The universe often works through details people overlook. And several important details are moving into place right now. That is why this season feels different. That is why the energy feels different. That is why your intuition may have been trying to get your attention. Something is approaching. Not necessarily a dramatic event. Not necessarily an instant transformation. But a meaningful development. A step. A movement. A breakthrough. And your person is closer to it than they realize. In fact, there is one final barrier standing between where they are now and the action they are beginning to consider. One lingering doubt. One remaining question. One fear that still occasionally whispers in the quiet moments. They have not completely overcome it yet. But they are getting closer. Much closer. Because every day, the truth grows stronger. Every day, the connection feels harder to ignore. Every day, the possibility of taking action feels more natural. And very soon, a moment will arrive that forces them to choose between staying where they have been, or stepping toward what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. What happens when that moment arrives may become the turning point they never saw coming. And the sign that this moment is approaching has already begun to appear. The sign did not arrive with fanfare. It did not announce itself. It did not demand attention. Instead, it appeared quietly, woven into ordinary moments. The kind of moments most people overlook. Yet your person could not overlook this one. Because once the heart becomes aware of something important, it begins noticing patterns that were always there. Suddenly, reminders appeared where none seemed to exist before. A familiar memory surfaced at an unexpected time. A certain thought returned with unusual strength. A feeling they believed had settled somehow felt alive again. And each time it happened, the same question echoed within them. Why does this keep coming back? The answer is simpler than they realize. What is meaningful does not disappear easily. What is real leaves an imprint. What matters finds a way of returning until it is understood. That truth is unfolding now. Your person is beginning to recognize that their emotions are not random. Their thoughts are not random. Their continued focus on this connection is not random. There is a reason their attention keeps returning here. A reason their heart keeps revisiting what their mind once tried to leave behind. And that realization is creating momentum. Momentum is a fascinating thing. At first, it seems invisible. Nothing appears different. Nothing appears to be moving. Then suddenly, everything begins shifting at once. That is where your person stands today. Closer to movement than they realize. Closer to clarity than they realize. Closer to honesty than they realize. And while part of them still hesitates, another part has already begun moving forward internally. That inner movement matters. Because every outward action begins as an inward decision. Every conversation begins as a thought. Every step begins as a realization. Every new chapter begins long before anyone else sees it. Your person is standing at the edge of such a chapter now. Not fully across the threshold. But no longer standing where they once were. And there is something else I want you to understand. This journey has not only been changing them. It has been changing you as well. Every season of waiting carries lessons. Every period of uncertainty develops strength. Every unanswered question creates space for growth. Nothing has been wasted. Not the confusion. Not the delays. Not the moments when you questioned what was happening. Even when you could not see the purpose. Purpose was still present. Even when you could not see movement. Movement was still occurring. Even when silence felt overwhelming. Important things were unfolding beneath that silence. Trust this. Some answers arrive immediately. Others arrive after preparation has taken place within both hearts. Preparation is what has been happening here. Quietly. Patiently. Carefully. The timing of certain developments often depends on who people are becoming, not simply what they want. And your person is becoming someone capable of seeing this connection with greater honesty than ever before. That transformation is not complete. But it is undeniable. Now the remaining question is not whether change is happening. Change is already happening. The remaining question is how they will respond to it. Will they continue resisting what they know? Or will they finally allow themselves to move toward it? That answer is drawing closer. Far closer than it once was. Because the fear that once seemed enormous is losing its influence. And the truth that once seemed distant is becoming impossible to ignore. Soon, a moment of clarity will arrive. A moment when everything feels different. A moment when hesitation no longer feels as comfortable as action. A moment when silence no longer feels as satisfying as honesty. When that moment arrives, your person may surprise even themselves. Because the heart has a remarkable ability to find courage when truth becomes stronger than fear. And according to the energy surrounding this connection, that balance is beginning to shift now. The courage is growing. The understanding is growing. The desire for clarity is growing. And with it comes the possibility of a new beginning. Not a perfect beginning. Not a guaranteed beginning. But a genuine one. A beginning built on awareness. Built on honesty. Built on emotions that have finally been acknowledged instead of hidden. And as this chapter approaches, one final realization is preparing to enter your person's heart. A realization so clear, so undeniable, that once it arrives, the path ahead may become impossible for them to ignore. And when that realization finally appears, everything they have been feeling will suddenly make sense.